Yeah. All right. Let's go. Okay. So, welcome. Thank you all for coming. Yeah. This is. I've not done this talk before, so we're going to talk specifically about fire or the qualities of fire, which is what the Beltane festival is about. The Celtic word for Beltane is Beltane, the gods of fire and the energy of fire. So this is. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Turn like that especially.
Is that okay? So he's recording me, so I can't really turn. But perhaps step back. Is that okay? I'll do this louder. Yeah, yeah. That's okay. So we're going to talk about. Are you? Do you want to come closer a little? I think that might be better. Yeah. Do you want to come closer? Are you happy with that? Yeah, that's nice. I like that. I like that. So we're going to talk about fire, which is what the festival of Beltane is about. So there are different types of fire, and when we're talking about fire, what is it that we're talking about? And for people who are engaged now, we're on a tarmac surface, limited plant life. We're not in a space where the effects of fire are very, very obvious. We don't really know what it means to be in a space where fire is very relevant to our daily lives. We have gas pumped into our houses. We're mostly not living in the countryside. We're here now. So different types of fire that we're talking about are is the sun, which is one type of fire, and then fire that we heat ourselves with. And what do these different types of fire represent? And there's also other types of fire like lava, like molten rock under the ground, that radiated fire, that heat. So there are different types of fire. So the next half an hour, 45 minutes, we're going to be discussing the significance of fire. And this is a very strange place to do it because, as I said, we're tarmacked. We've got mostly artificial materials around us. So we're out of context of what this talk is going to be about. So for me, I'm around fire quite a lot. I have places where I live, not in this country, but also in this country, where we heat with fire. So we burn wood, I chop wood, prepare wood, we burn wood for fuel. So I have a relationship to fire that is quite rich and quite personal and quite for me feels quite deep. That's the burning of wood. That gives you by burning wood you start to have a different appreciation of woodland, of forest, and what that can give you. It's you're directly benefiting from wood. You're directly benefiting from trees in a way that most people aren't. And what that means is, I mean, on one level, the UK government now are clamping down on people burning wood, and for lots of reasons, for emissions, mostly because we don't have the forestry resources that we used to have. So it doesn't seem sustainable. But when you start living by fire and having a relationship to fire, you realize that there's a lot more to the quality of fire than it might seem at first. And one of those things is a connection back to the forest. Is a connection back to the forest. So what we've done in this country, unfortunately, we've removed the majority of our woodland, of our forest. So that's material that you could burn directly. So 70% of the landscape is now under agricultural use, and then another 10% is under other industrial use or urban city landscape. So you don't actually have free access to wood, and if you wanted to access wood, you actually have to pay quite a premium for it. So we're already putting ourselves at a disadvantage in terms of having a relationship to fire because we don't have the prerequisite, which is wood. We have gas pumped into our lives, which is a blessing, but also it means that we're just like buying food off the shelf. We don't really understand where gas comes from. We don't really understand. So there's a dissonance, there's a disconnect between how we heat ourselves and what that fuel actually is. So if I take fire, so we start at the fire triangle. So the fire triangle, you need three things to make fire work. Laius, what are the three things you need to make fire work? Or anyone?
I'm not keeping track on it.
You're not keeping track of it. Okay, then Goldie. Oxygen. Yes. What else do you need to make fire work? You need a fuel and ignition. Correct. Yeah, yeah. So all these things are here. So the fuel in here is the gas. There's oxygen in the atmosphere, in the environment, and then there's a spark. There's a little sparking mechanism, and when I press them, all three, you get a fire. So that's one type of fire. That's one type of fire, and the implications of that are huge. The implications are huge. The other type of fire that we'll talk about now is the sun. So the sun and this fuel and wood fuel are connected. And we don't often think about it like that, but the energy of the sun, the fire of the sun is created by a different type of chemical reaction. So that's a nuclear fusion. So that's when protons or hydrogen atoms fuse together, four of them fuse together to form helium, and that energy and that chemical reaction releases energy, releases a remarkable amount of energy, and that is where the fuel, that's the heat and the light that is emitted from the sun comes from that chemical reaction. So that's the joining of atoms to release energy. So we can talk about fire in terms of its chemical attributes. We can talk about fire in terms of its thermodynamic attributes. So thermodynamically, we're talking about enthalpy. So the increase in energy, and that's what enthalpy is. It's the output of energy. So that's almost a limitless supply of heat. One of many millions, billions of stars in the galaxies that we're inhabiting somehow. That heat is released, and we can feel that, but it's also released as light. And that light is the transmitting of energy also. So that light is at transmitting energy. It's also a heat, a radiative heat. So the light that comes from the sun, which is what we're welcoming back in Beltane. We're welcoming back the light. We're welcoming back summer. We're welcoming back energy back after the winter. So Beltane, Samhain, the pagan, the festival calendar is built upon our landscape. It's built upon our where we are situated. My ancestry is from the Indian subcontinent, where that's an equatorial zone. That's a tropical zone. So because of the tilt of the earth, you don't have the seasons that you do here. So they wouldn't have festivals around these type of distinct seasonal changes because they don't really exist. So around the tropical and the equatorial zones, the sun is mostly continually shining. So and actually it's considered, rather a nuisance because it's so often there. They don't really want to celebrate that. Actually, they rather celebrate the rain and other things that bring fertility. So what we see here is a particular anthropological phenomena of deification, of ritualization around our particular location, geolocation, our landscape, and how we interact with the landscape. Okay, so here in this is a concrete space. You don't feel the value of what the sun is doing, but what the sun is doing, the sun is shining into this. Okay, so the sun is shining into the chlorophyll, into here. And I think a lot of people think that something solid, like the lignin and the cellulose in a tree, is coming from the soil. Somehow it's coming from the soil, and it makes something solid, goes to something solid, which we're used to working with. But actually what is happening is the carbon dioxide in the air. So in the air that we're here, that we're breathing, light comes through here. Carbon dioxide comes up through the stomata, as you're probably all well aware. Carbon dioxide is taken up through the stomata of any green leaf, or any red leaf as well. And the sunlight fixes the carbon dioxide into sugar molecules, glucose molecules. And those glucose molecules can be used either for metabolism, so energy production, So they can be burnt as a fuel by the plant to process, to proceed metabolic reactions in the cell, or they can be converted into structural compounds like lignin or cellulose. And those structural carbohydrate molecules are what makes up the bark and the leaf and the structure of the tree. So the structure of the tree is coming directly from a fixing of carbon dioxide using light energy. So now what's happening is you're creating from carbon dioxide and through certain enzymatic interactions, well, rubisco, which is an enzyme in the chloroplast, in the chloroplasts where the chlorophyll is being held, those enzymatic reactions result in small molecules of carbon dioxide coming together, CO2 coming together to form glucose, a glucose monomer, we call it, a glucose molecule. And that takes energy, which is coming from the sun. So to create that molecule, it takes energy, okay? So it's endothermic, we call this endothermic. But by doing that, you've created a molecule that has potential energy. So now that's a chemical compound, glucose, which we also take in when we're having food. That chemical compound has potential energy. And when you use it in a metabolic process, or any metabolic process, it releases energy, which is what powers us. I mean, that's how we operate. The fundamentals of our metabolic operations are the metabolism of glucose. And the same is true for plants. That process is again the breaking up of the carbon molecule that we've created with the sun, the glucose molecule. And it's that we burn in a fire. It's that we burn in a fire. So when we chop a tree down and we break it down and we put it in a fire, the energy, so what I'd like you to see is that the energy that's held in the tree, in the wood, in the carbon aspect of that material has come from the sun. It has come from the sun. So the fire that you're burning, the energy that you're burning and releasing to heat yourself, to heat your house, has come from the sun. It's been stored, it's been created and fixed in a chemical way here using very, very clever processes, and you've created a chemical storage using photosynthesis of wood, which you then burn and release that energy. Does it make sense? So we don't usually think about that. We don't usually think about energy like that, how it's moved from the sun, stored in chemical bonds in wood, and also in the gas. So this gas has come from crude oil. It's a fraction of crude oil, which is organic matter from living organisms for over millions and millions of years. So that is also stored carbon, stored fixed carbon, which has utilized the sun's energy. And that energy is found in here over very, very millions and millions of years and much processing to get this fraction out. Bless you. So does that make sense? So what we're talking about now is fuel for our homes, which we're very disconnected from. So it might not seem so relevant, but for us who use wood to heat our homes, it's very relevant and very direct. The primary metabolites that a plant creates, so primary metabolites are fats, sugars, proteins. They're all enzymatic processes to create them. Again, it's the sun's energy that are utilized to photosynthesize those products in glucose, and they power multiple biochemical reactions in the cell. So without the sun's energy, you don't get photosynthesis, you don't get any primary metabolite production, you don't get plant growth, you don't get animals feeding on plants, you don't get insects feeding on plants, you don't get anything without the sun's energy. So, which is what happens in winter. We go through that process in the winter where everything dies back, and you have to supplement your animals if you want to keep them alive with some other saved grain or something else. So traditionally, Beltane was the time of the year where for the first time, you can let your animals out to pasture. You can let your animals out to pasture because there's enough light to grow enough grass for them to pasture again. So you get that cycle returning. That's traditionally this time of the year. And so this I think what I'm mostly bringing to light is that in a concreted space, a cityscape, you only get just a fragment of what Beltane actually represents. Because to really understand the implications of the sun and what it brings to your life, you have to be living in nature, which is what the pagan religion, these Celtic religions, are coming from nature-based peoples, people who are living very much in direct relationship to the natural world. So, yeah, does that make sense? What I've said so far? Does anyone have any questions on what I've said so far? It's quite a lot. I've talked quite a lot, but yeah, and there's a lot to it. So, I'm happy to go into any one of the directions. Yeah, go.
We're on tarmac, which is probably the end process of oil, isn't it? So it's
Yes.
we're still on the connection.
That's
with
true.
the sun,
That's true.
I guess.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. So the tarmac or bitumen, this kind of this is the lower fraction of this kind of process. So the higher fraction, when you separate oil, crude oil, is the gas, refined gas, and the heaviest is actually here. So this is still, yeah, you're right. It's stone, which is not organic, but the tar that's holding it together is organic. So you're right. That actually is still an energetically reliant on the sun to have created. So that's a really good point. Yeah, thank you for making that. Yeah. Any other questions or comments or ideas or contributions? No.
It all makes sense. I've not really thought about it.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So moving from fuel to food, we understand that it takes a summer to create an apple. So this is an apple tree, you know that. And these are the blossoms that come in response to the emergence of light after the winter. So plant hormones are sensitive to light and they're sensitive to gravity, and there's lots of different hormones working together. So once a tree senses an increase in temperature and an increase in light, they'll start to produce certain hormones which stimulate the emergence of buds and leaves to capture that light. Wow.
Celebrate
Is it? That's lovely. You think so? Yeah? Are you happy to continue? Yeah. So the plant hormones are released and I can't hear myself. The plant hormones are secreted in response to light. And the plant therefore is sensitive to light. So if I release something in response to light, I need to sense the light and then I need to act in response. And that's how it works. So you'll see this tip, okay? This tip will grow towards the light. So if I shaded it, it would die back or it would find another route to the light if I shaded it. Or if there's another part of it that's in shade, it won't grow as much. So that tip is filled with auxin, which is a particular plant hormone, which makes the plant grow towards the light so that it can capture that light. Then the plant fixes the carbon dioxide in the air, as I said, converts it to the sugar molecules, and as an apple is produced, that is a concentration of glucose molecules that is concentrated in the fruit. So the plant decides to concentrate glucose molecules in the fruit, but over the period of summer, when the light is most intense, and you can ensure that conversion from carbon dioxide to glucose will occur. Then we take that fruit. That whole process has relied on the sun, as I mentioned. That's now chemical energy stored in the fruit. When we take the fruit in the end of summer towards the autumn, we take the fruit and we take a bite of it. we take in that glucose, we break it up. There's all sorts of mechanisms we won't go into, but you can break up those carbohydrate molecules, and they're already broken up to some degree. But you can break up, for example, the same thing happens in potatoes as a tuber. You have starch. That's carbohydrate, a storage carbohydrate molecule. So it's glucose transferred to starch, and we can break that up, and we can release that energy in our bodies, in our cells, and that fuels us. So we're talking. The reason I'm saying that, just to bring to light that the sun's energy via photosynthetic reactions and then our own metabolic reactions, cellular biochemistry, is transferred to us and literally fueling us. And it's very important just to make those links, because once you make those links, you start to understand why the nature peoples worshipped or created a deity from the sun, and if not worshipped the sun, at least honored the sun and the return of the sun, because it was literally the sustenance of your own being. And if you can't do that, because you're in the city, or you're mostly in a building, or you're mostly buying things from the shop, which I am now. That's how I'm living right now. You start to create a disconnect between you and actually the source of your well-being via all these mechanisms that I've described. And what that does, it means that you're living a life that's not necessarily completely in tune with how we've evolved over these years. And that leads to some disturbances, some sort of it leads to lots of things. It leads to a lot of issues, which I think societally we can. That's another talk. But a lot of issues come from that. Come from breaking that link to the natural world. So yeah, just painting that process for you, and helping you to see that the food that we take into ourselves is all reliant, whether it's plant-based or meat-based. It's ultimately reliant on the sun's energy and those very, very delicate processes and very complex processes, so that we can actually thrive as human beings in the ecosystems that we find ourselves in. Yeah, I think I think that on the scientific aspect, I'd like to stop speaking on. Any questions? Any ideas? Any comments? Yeah.
What you're saying about the disturbances in people not living more in harmony with the land, could that be a sense of a different fire that is emerging within us because of the lack of getting what we need? And then there's the other side of fire, that when we are in harmony, another joy gets to be released. I don't know, I just feel like that's for me what I was getting from. It's like it's the turn of fire.
Okay. Could you say it again? Because I don't think that was. Yeah, if you could just say it again.
Oh gosh. So the way you were talking about fire then, in reference to how we're connected to the land now, and the disturbances that we're feeling as human beings from not being connected to the land, could that be incurring a different kind of fire? I'm meaning like rage, fire, or anger, being built up within us through not connecting to it in a way that brings joy and harmony and release in a positive way.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've ever thought about it like that. Yeah, it's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could really answer that comprehensively.
You
Is
got
there
some
a-
ideas.
Yeah.
That's where my
Yeah.
thoughts were going.
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great comment then, because I think that's true. Yeah, something happens in us when we're separated from fully expressing these things. That's true. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, when we talk about fire, so in the Greek myths, fire is also always related to love, to passion, and to anger. It's these elements, and it's the bringing up of power. It's the bringing up and actualizing power within us. So that can happen physically, that can happen emotionally, that can happen spiritually, and I think that's right. Yeah, I think we have an inherent fire that is made to coexist in the natural world, and when that breaks, it becomes pathological. That's true. Yeah, yeah. It's pathological, and we see lots of mental health issues arise. Lots of things arise out of that inability to connect back into that and express it healthily. I think that's true. Good, good point. Yeah, great, great. Yeah, yeah. That's really yeah. Any other points or comments? Yeah. I think now with the music coming through, I think it's beautiful. Yeah, it's because the other part of fire, as we were talking about, the other aspect of anger, which we say is love or passion. When we say people are their heart is on fire, they're in love. When you're in love with something or with someone, your heart is on fire. And well, for me, I can say specifically, when I've come to the city, I felt less connected to my heart, and less connected in that way to the aspect of living fully and vibrantly. And it affects the way that you love. Imagine that where you live can affect the way that you love, because you don't wake up to birdsong, you wake up to cars. You don't wake up to the sunlight, you wake up to perhaps artificial light. You don't wake up to soil beneath your feet, you wake up to concrete or something like that. So all these things will affect the way that you interact with the world, and how open your heart is, and how much fire you can actually harness in your life and bring forward, and also express in a healthy way, as you said. So all these things come together about. I could talk, perhaps not now, but perhaps another time, about the esoteric aspects of fire, and esoteric aspects of the heart, and what it actually means to try and live from the heart and in these ways. But I somehow feel that this is not the time or space to do that. But that's also another element that we need to consider, is that fire in the heart from a spiritual dimension is a very real aspect of life. And unfortunately, in the city, or maybe just generally in the Western world, we've had to dull that so that we can progress economically, we can progress industrially, we can progress materially. And that comes at a huge cost to the heart when we have to focus on the head and the mind. So I just mentioned that briefly, but it's a very, very real consideration to try and reconnect to the heart and let that become the center of our being rather than the mind. I'm a scientist, so I was conditioned to be here mostly. But pulling the power away, and I've just written an article about this in this journal, but pulling the power away from the mind, and forcing yourself not to be so industrious all the time, and pushing yourself back out into the natural world, means that you're accessing parts of the being which have been subconsciously and inadvertently suppressed, and that is the realm of the heart. And we talk about the Christ energy, which I'm not competent to speak on, but the sacred heart of Jesus always has a flame in it. The Sacred Heart of Jesus always has a flame in it, which I find interesting. I'm not a Christian, but I find that interesting. So pulling all of your energy back through here, it's only really relatively recently, post-industrial age, that the mind, and when we look at the philosophy of René Descartes, that the mind, which is electrical in its energy, becomes the forefront and the center of the human experience. So when you say to someone, what's the most important organ in the body, most people will probably tell you it's the brain, because we so are utilizing the rational, logical mind. But the emotional heart, and the heart that should be listening to this music, for example, this is actually really beautiful that this is coming at this time. Music, art, poetry, the natural world, dreams, that speaks to something different than the intellectual mind. So we can talk forever about the intellectual aspects, the scientific aspects of what's happening, but real lived life is coming through the ears now, through the eyes and into the heart, and it's an altogether different experience. And it's the fire in the heart that I'd like to end this session with, because that I find is probably the most impoverished aspect of our being. Multiple reasons for it. Yeah, I think we should listen to more music like this. So I'm going to stop there because I feel like I'm just stopping you from listening to the music. But yeah, 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 yeah. Well, it's beautiful. I'm really, yeah, and, yeah,
You can see you keep drifting.
yeah. It's the head and the heart. It's like pulling you there. Does anyone have any comments, or anyone would like to contribute to that what I've said here? No.
It really resonates because I work in the world of education with teenagers, and a lot of them ask, "But is this true? Is this
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Is this
yeah.
right?" That's not the right question. It's like, would you look at a piece of poetry and say, "Is it true?"
Yes. I like that. Yeah, yeah,
Relative to the receiver, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's the way we enter the world now. We're very, very good at critically analyzing things. So we're all scientifically educated for the most part, or push towards that, at least until we can choose what we want to study. But what that does is it makes you look at the world in quite mundane, materialistic, reductionist ways, which as a scientist is really very useful. It's very useful for me to be able to do that and critically analyze processes and phenomena. But to live your life like that, that might be the way that you work or you utilize those tools. But to live like that it's the same as not listening to music, or it's the same as saying, yeah, what's true? I don't understand poetry. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make any sense. Like that's an altogether different pathology. When you can't relate to art or music or those richer aspects of the human experience, and it's the same in the natural world. You know, you go and then for my work with the Forestry Commission, I was speaking a lot to foresters or or farmers, and they look at a piece of land and they'll show you exactly what they want to do with it. They want to do that. They want to put rows of this here. The rows of got a permacultural expert, so you'll know all what I'm talking about. So they want to do all these things and monoculture, but actually to really understand what the potential of that space could be in all of its complexity, in all of its diversity, in all of the species interactions that could take place, it's the same as a poem or a piece of art. You have to move into a different space altogether. And it's the same as taking in that music. It's a different space, and it's the realms of the heart. It's not really the mind that can work like that. So it's important to teach. I mean, it's important for me to remember it first and foremostly, but to bring that way, there's different ways of knowing. There's an intellectual way of knowing, and there's another way of knowing, and that's important to bring validity to both. So yeah, credit to you for trying to do that. Do you want to go? Yes. Okay, I'm going to give this.
And I was amazed. How nice is that?
Does anyone else, in the meantime, want to say anything on this?
Brilliant. I saw it.
Steve, do you want to say any words? Joy, do you want to add anything to what you've heard? That's okay. Do you want to say any? Goldie? Anybody else want to say any? Yes.
I think we forget that we're here because of the sun. Not that it's a gift or a miracle, but without the sun and us being in the right place, we would not be here. And I think obviously we've learned from the sun, because without the sun, we don't exist. So we've got that innate sense of the sun. So I guess we're kind of people of the sun, really. And yeah, yes, it's an unprocessed thought. So that's as far as I got with it. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
We're suffocated elementals as we go around the earth. Really.
You read it out.
I'd be happy if you read it.
I've
you're
got my
happy to.
glasses on.
Yeah, okay, shall I read it? Okay.
If you don't.
Zebel, do you want to read it? Do you want to read this poem? No.
It's related to what you've been saying.
Okay, I'll read it. Thank you for this. Do you know where it's from?
I got this from Q.
Okay, so this is a poem in Kew Gardens.
I wonder, they can tell you about
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this poem is called the Sun Garden. It says, shining down, burning bright, giving heat, giving light. The cells in the leaves of the plants and the trees allow sunlight to meet all of their needs. Plants need sun to make their own meals, and we need plants for our forests and fields. Yeah, it's very nice. I should have just read that.
I know, I can't.
Could have just shut up. Yeah, this works. Yeah.
How? Do it. Does your voice go louder?
Yeah, it does.
Go then, do it.
No, but I am speaking.
No, but it's not louder. It sounds like a normal voice.
No, it's recording into the phone. It's not a speaker. This is Isabel. This is my niece. She's the best. Zia, do you want to say anything about? Do you want to say anything about fire?
So I don't know anything about this apart from the headline I've seen about it. I haven't read about it or anything. But you know, this experiments that they're doing to dull the sunlight. I don't know how that works or anything. Do you know about that? And what do you think about it? I've just broken your clip. Sorry.
So now there are lots of technological. Thank you, Zia. Thank you, Bobo. So the lady spoke about a technological fix to refract or reflect back the sun, and so it doesn't enter the Earth's atmosphere, thereby cooling the Earth somewhat. So these are small particles that are released out, and the idea is that it's in an inexpensive way to cool the Earth. And this is, for me, reading these kind of things. I just wrote an article for this journal talking about this kind of broken way of thinking. It's such a broken way of thinking that we can deforest much of our Earth, take away the natural evolved mechanisms that would take out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and then not only do that and sequester carbon, take out carbon, but also provide oxygen and also multitude of benefits, which is what we experience, for millions of years. So to think that the excess carbon dioxide that we've created from our industrial age can be fixed by, Einstein said you can't fix a problem with the same mind that created it, and this is exactly what we're seeing. The mind that created these issues in the first place is trying to attempt it with the same tools and the same mechanisms, and you can't do that effectively. That's my own opinion. So rather than encourage landowners to plant trees and reforest or reorient our priorities so that they're not economic, but they're rather sustainable, there are other priorities other than economic. That would bring health back to the landscapes, and that would bring more health back to us, and it would bring automatic carbon sequestration because you're rebuilding ecosystems. And for the Forestry Commission, what they were showing us was which tree species sequestered the most carbon, and these are high-level people in the organisation. So they showed multiple tree species, and of course Sitka spruce, which is a fast-growing softwood conifer. It grows quite quickly, and because you're only measuring the above-ground carbon, which is the trunk, that on the scientific graph, was the species that was deemed the best for quickly sequestering carbon in this country. But we're not talking about the underground carbon. We're not talking about the fungal and bacteria. We're not talking about the insects that would live in or around those trees. And we're not talking about the ecosystems that would grow up, because the Sitka spruce isn't native here, and it wouldn't create an ecosystem. All of which those constituents, they are carbon. So with a limited way of thinking and a limited metric, you will get very limited answers, and they will always have hidden and unintended consequences. So the answer to that is it's very narrow, very limited way of thinking, like most of these things are, like pumping out carbon dioxide from the air and fixing it. It's all, I mean, like, that's incredible. Like, it's an incredible Yeah. Does that answer the question? Yeah, yeah. Good question. Yeah. Any other questions around this? No. Ziabel, any questions? Yeah, so I think I'll probably wrap up here just because my voice is going a little bit as well. Yeah, if anyone has any other comments though or wants to contribute to the conversation, yeah, it can turn into a collaborative sort of space now and we can discuss and talk and yeah. Any questions? No, no.
That's not a question. That's
Okay.
a terrible squeak.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think what we could end on is like a veneration to the sun. It doesn't have to equate as a worshipping because there are so many elements to our being that are required for our well-being. But just perhaps we can just stop here for a minute and give gratitude to the sun, gratitude to this time of the year when we can again feel the sun. I feel so well with the sun, and we can just bring all these threads to a like a meditative close. Yeah. So should we start with that, Ziba?
What?
So we do a minute or so, just to
You did that yesterday. You fell asleep, wasn't it?
probably, yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yesterday you said you were lying in the sun on the grass and you fell asleep.
Yeah, that's true. I did. Yeah.
It was absorbing it in.
Absorbing it in. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's do that again. Let's not fall asleep. Okay. I'm gonna close my eyes for just a minute.
Trying our best. But yeah, there's a QR code on that link. There's 2 Instagrams on there. She wants to make sure Instagram parents. I'll be able to give it a like straight away. Cheers, thanks for your thank you. Enjoy your day.
Who's doing that?
Doing
Not squeaking.
I don't know. Yeah. If you want to speak more, I'm here. This is my stall, but I don't want to attach the two. I want this to be a separate, independent discussion on these topics. But if you want to speak more, I will be there.
There.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good.
What is it? Okay. So we've closed this talk. I just want to the sacred space of this. Yeah. So here, I trained as a pharmacist, like 10 years ago,
That noise.
and then I apprenticed as a medical herbalist, and then I've just recently come back from Sweden 2 years ago, where I did my masters in forestry and forest ecology, and then a thesis in mycology. So this drink is basically a synthesis of the last 15 years of my life. It's an extract of medicinal plants, medicinal fungi, and tree products, nuts. And the idea is that it's an alternative to coffee and to energy drinks. So you take a little bit of that. You get a stimulant effect from the kola nut and the guarana that I've extracted into it, but it's also a supplementing of mushrooms and other medicinal plants in there. So that's the product. Yeah. So Goldie's been a long time fan. Yeah. So, yeah. But that's my work. Yeah. You just have 20 to 30 mils each day. And I add sparkling water to mine, and it's just like So originally, Coca-Cola was a stimulant tonic created by a pharmacist, also, John Pemberton in the US, and that's where the drink actually became famous. It was a tonic, medicinal tonic. Now it is not. So this is bringing that back, but also bringing back the connection back to the land and back to the forest, which is my work also. So that is that for you to. If you would like to try some, Alex will give you some to try. You don't have to buy any. You can try it at least.
Drinking it in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zia's also a fan of it. She loves it.
Oh yeah, and in front of you.
Yeah.
Elephants.
I guess yeah. But please at least take a card and be in touch if you want to be in touch. So there's cards in these